English and German are the two most commonly spoken Germanic languages, and for being so closely related, they don't resemble each other too much in the modern era. Today, I'm going to analyze the sounds, spelling, grammar, and vocabulary of both languages, and note their similarities and differences. To give some background, German is spoken primarily in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and most importantly Liechtenstein, whereas English is spoken all over the world and internet, primarily as a second language, with the US and UK being notable for having the highest number of its native speakers. Both languages are specifically part of the West Germanic branch of the language family, meaning they're more genetically close to each other and Dutch than Germanic languages such as Swedish and Gothic, which are from different branches. German isn't exactly one language, but a bunch of closely related languages, all united by a common official language, Standard German, which will be the variety I'm describing. Let's start off by talking about the sounds of English and German. Both languages have a high number of vowels. The ones that resemble each other, at least phonemically, are a, I, o, u, and a. German speakers generally pronounce these sounds not too differently from how I just said them, but English speakers often have more variety. For instance, many dialects, including my own, merge a and o, pronounce a and o as diphthongs, and say e and u in a variety of wacky ways. German also has the vowels u, and ü, which only exist in a few English dialects as allophones. Standard German also distinguishes long and short forms of a and e, something that English doesn't do. On the flip side, English has the phoneme a, which German doesn't, though a is an allophone of a in some northern dialects. The three pure diphthongs I, ow, and oi are very similar between the two languages. Both languages aspirate p, t, and k at the starts of syllables without s. Compare English peak with a puff of air and the word speak without it. Or German
Tat
and
Start.
English and German both allow the velar nasal ng at the ends of syllables only, and have syllabic l and n after consonants at the ends of words. Compare the English words little and kitten with German
Titel
and
Bitten.
both languages have relatively long consonant clusters both at the starts and ends of syllables, though the exact clusters are different between them. For example, German has the cluster kn as in
Knoten.
and while English spells its cognate not with a k and n, only the n is pronounced. English has many clusters with the sound sa, which are instead pronounced as sha in German thanks to a sound shift, exemplified by cognates steel and
Stahl.
Clusters at the beginning of syllables with ya and wa are decently common in English, but are atypical of German, especially since it doesn't have a wa sound, only va. The letter r is pronounced in a variety of different ways across both languages. At the beginning of syllables in German, it's generally pronounced as uvular, and it is phonemically an alveolar approximate ra in English, with a bajillion different allophones. At the ends of syllables, German usually reduces r to the vowel a, which is comparable to British English, which generally reduces the sound to schwa. General American, on the other hand, has r rhoticized the vowel before it. German, at least in northern varieties, devoices its voiced obstruents at the ends of words, while English keeps them voiced and lengthens the vowel before these sounds. Compare English bat with a short vowel and bad with a long vowel. German has the affricates pfa and tsa, which do not appear in English. German also has a phoneme which varies from the velar or uvular fricative ch to the palatal fricative xia. Ch appears in a few English dialects, though it appears very rarely in them, and most dialects lack it altogether. The palatal fricative does appear as an allophone of ha before u, as in hue and human. The voiced sounds ja and ja are much rarer and more marginal in German than they are in English. German has neither of the th sounds th and the, trademark features of English. In their evolutionary history, both languages have undergone significant sound shifts since Proto-Germanic. English went through the Great Vowel Shift around the era between Middle English and Early Modern English, while German underwent the High German Consonant Shift, both of which help explain differences in cognates between the two. Now to compare how the languages spell words. Both German and English use the Latin alphabet, though in their own distinct ways. One thing that immediately sticks out upon reading German texts is that words starting with capital letters are used far more often than in English or most other languages. While both languages capitalize words at the start of sentences, English only has its proper nouns in uppercase, whereas German capitalizes all of its nouns, regardless of where they are in the sentence. German spelling uses umlauts before the vowels a, o, and u, and has the special letter st, whereas English is allergic to any diacritics. Both languages often use double letters for single consonant sounds, usually to indicate that the vowel before them is short. English very often uses C to represent the sound K, while German rarely does, opting for K instead, except for the digraph CK to represent a double K, which English also uses. Both English and German have unadapted borrowings from other languages, which inherit the spelling conventions of the originating language regardless of how it's pronounced, although German also often Germanicizes the spelling, unlike English, which rarely anglicizes any borrowings. German usually doesn't put spaces between compounds, which is how you end up with beautiful words like
Sozialversicherungsfachangestellten Auszubildender.
English, on the other hand, flip-flops between putting spaces between compounds or not, but in general doesn't allow long words like these to form. English very often has silent letters, whereas German hardly has any. Pretty much only the letter H after vowels is ever silent, but even then has the function of marking the vowel before it as long. E at the ends of English words is usually silent if it's not the only vowel in the word, but in German, E is usually pronounced as the schwa in this context. German uses the trigraph sch for the sounds sh, and quadgraphs tsch and dsch for ch and ja. English, of course, uses sh, ch, and j for these. German j, on the other hand, represents the semivowel ya like most other Germanic languages. English is abnormal among them for using y. Other standout characteristics of German spelling are w for v for fa in addition to va in loanwords, s being pronounced z at the starts of words at least in Germany, z for ts, ei for I, and eu for oi. Now for everyone's favorite part of the video, grammar! English and German both at their core have subject-verb-object word order, and put both adjectives and prepositions before nouns. The two languages have separate comparative and superlative suffixes for adjectives. English uses either these or the standalone words more and most, while German only ever uses the suffixes a or sta. In forming plurals, English reliably uses the suffix s most of the time, whereas German words vary between a, sa, or no suffix for their plurals. Both languages change the word's vowels in a process called Ablaut for marking certain plurals, though German does this more frequently. For example, there's English goose for the singular and geese for the plural, while German uses
Gans
and
Gänse
respectively. This vowel alternation also happens with verbs. While regular verbs, referred to as weak verbs, have a simple suffix for changing the present tense roots to the past tense, irregulars, called strong verbs, have ablaut and change the vowel. Compare English we drink and we drank with German
Wir trinken
and
Wir tranken.
English and German verbs both have present and past forms of verbs as one word each, while the future tense is formed with separate helper words, as are the perfect and pluperfect. Note that in spoken German, the perfect is preferred over the simple past. The two languages often combine prepositions with verbs to change the meaning, such as live out in English and
Ausleben
in German. These phrases often separate the preposition from the verb, as in the sentence live your life out. Both languages, to some extent, have the verb change form based on the pronoun of the subject, but in modern English, this only happens in the third-person singular present. For example, there's he laughs, she laughs, and it laughs with the suffix s, but with you laugh, we laugh, they laugh, and the form laughed for all subjects in the past, though there used to be more separate conjugations in Middle English. German, on the other hand, has its verb change form based on the subject far more often, exemplified by present tense
Ich lache, du lachst, er lacht, wir lachen, ihr lacht, sie lachen
and past tense
Ich lachte, du lachtest, er lachte, wir lachten, ihr lachtet, sie lachten.
Warning. I am about to discuss the subjunctive. Viewer discretion and pausing to read this explanation on screen is advised. German retains the subjunctive mood, whereas in English it is marginal, optional, and uncommon. To be frank, I wish the English subjunctive were removed entirely. German, like all other Germanic languages, has V2 word order, where a verb is required to be in the second slots of any clause, sometimes even before the subject. English only enforces this in a few contexts, like the phrase neither do I. German also has verb final word order, so when there's an auxiliary verb, it takes the V2 slot, while the main verb goes towards the ends of the sentence or clause. Compare the sentences
Ich esse Pizza
and
Ich will Pizza essen.
Meaning I eat pizza and I want to eat pizza. German has 4 grammatical cases: the nominative, marking the subject of the sentence, the accusative and dative mark direct and indirect objects respectively, and the genitive case marks relation or possession. English pronouns do have different forms for when they are a subject, object, or possessive, but has lost any case marking for nouns, which German has retained. German nouns can also have one of three grammatical genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter, while English doesn't. If you couldn't tell already, German has a tendency to keep grammatical features that got lost in English. While English uses it to refer to any inanimate thing, German only uses its equivalent of the neuter pronoun es for grammatically neuter nouns, while using er meaning he for masculine nouns and sie meaning she for feminine nouns, even when the masculine noun is a scream and the feminine noun is a factory. Adjectives, articles, and determiners all change based on the number, case, and gender of the noun they modify in German. English has a possessive suffix with s, as in the bird's chirp. The similarly functioning German genitive case typically has a similar ending s, although increasingly, the genitive is not being used for possessive clauses, instead being replaced by
von,
meaning from. Counting is different in German, where units are placed before tens, so instead of 21, German speakers literally say 1 and 20, or
21.
While both languages change the sentence's word order to make yes or no questions, English also adds do as an auxiliary verb. There are a lot of contractions in English, particularly of pronouns and modal particles, such as I am shortening to I'm, and we will to we'll. German has contractions too, notably with articles combining with prepositions, but most of these are informal. I could talk about a few other small grammatical things, but I think that's enough for us to move on to vocabulary. Being Germanic languages, the core of both German and English vocabulary is of native Germanic origin, making up the bulk of the most commonly used words. English, though, is notorious for how much of its lexicon is loaned from other languages, particularly French and Latin, to the point where estimates say that only 25 to 30% of English's vocabulary comes from native Germanic roots, while 60% comes from French or Latin. German also has plenty of French and Latin loanwords, but far less than English. Only 20% of German vocabulary was of French or Latin origin as of the early 1800s. I'm sorry I couldn't get a slightly more modern estimate. Regardless, there are plenty of cognates between English and German, though some are harder to identify than others. English loanwords are abundant in German, especially in the modern era, but there aren't as many German loanwords in English. Here are a bunch of words in both English and German, categorized by their origins in both languages. Shared Germanic cognates: fingernail,
Fingernagel,
house,
Haus,
shoulder,
Schulter
and water,
Wasser,
bring,
bringen,
clear,
klar,
for,
für,
land,
Land,
earth,
Erde,
8,
acht,
think,
denken,
what,
was,
ear,
Ohr,
worm,
Wurm,
name,
Name,
rub,
reiben,
swim,
schwimmen,
tongue,
Zunge,
old,
alt,
snow,
Schnee,
great,
groß,
round,
rund,
see,
sehen,
mother,
Mutter,
French or Latin loans, ballad,
Ballade,
sauce,
Soße,
engineer,
Ingenieur,
dessert,
Dessert,
project,
Projekt,
horror,
Horror,
status,
Status,
type,
Typ,
romance in English, Germanic in German, image,
Bild,
mountain,
Berg,
animal,
Tier,
train,
Zug,
immediate,
sofort,
city,
Stadt,
village,
Dorf,
surprise,
Überraschung,
English loans in German,
Baby, Flirten, Job, Start.
German loans in English. I had to cherry pick good examples. Kindergarten, kobold, pretzel, poodle. And that's all for this video. Massive thanks to all the German speakers who helped out with this video. Thank you to my Patreon supporters S. von Nostrand, Sunder, Eric Kasim, Adam Zrinek, Luke Jensen, Jolly Pikachu, Gekivion, Andrew Brown, Carol Soul, and Peter F. And until next time, auf Wiedersehen.